So we've asked Dave to come and talk about performance-enhancing drugs and mental health. I know there are an awful lot of people that use performance-enhancing drugs in the UK. It's huge now. And what I'm seeing in the shop and what I'm sure a lot of you see, and more people using things that they don't necessarily understand, using them even though they've only been in the gym for 6 months or a year, and then all of a sudden having huge issues around anxiety or depression or bipolar. And there's definitely some kind of link going on there. And I know something that Dave looked into quite a bit. So we asked him to come and talk about it. And at some point, hopefully he will.
Talk now.
I'll leave you to it.
You shit at announcing.
I didn't have a chance to prepare.
Speaking your own notes, right? Prepare, plan.
That's
Read these and all like that.
You crack on.
Right. This is probably a topic that's poorly understood. From a large point of view, the understanding of a lot of this stuff is that it's best guess. There's very little research in steroid use at supraphysiological doses, basically the doses that users use, and its effect on the brain. The difficult area with mental health, particularly with this sort of stuff, is that there are numerous studies out there that show a comparison in mental health or depressive-like episodes in trained individuals, non-trained individuals, and trained individuals that are users. And you would think that it would be non-trained individuals would be moderate to high, trained individuals would be low, and then trained individuals that are users would potentially be high. And it's not. Non-trained are low, trained are higher, and trained in usage are even higher again. And though physical exercise is actually a good weapon against depression, the problem is that it's not the exercise that's the issue, it's the exposure to the fitness world that's the issue. Which is, I know is going to be covered in more detail later, so I won't even touch on it. But it's when people enter the fitness or go on their fitness journey, what a blow of bollocks that is, but the point is that when people enter into this world of health and fitness, they suddenly then get bombarded with a plethora of images of what is the perfect body, which they would normally not be exposed to. So their insecurities that weren't too bad suddenly become very bad. Then on top of this, you have a very strong science click when it comes to fitness, particularly when it comes around food. And you get people that become then very fixated on macros, or very fixated on food types, and eating disorders within the fitness world, particularly within the bodybuilding world, are rife. But we just don't view them as eating disorders. But when you're dieting, if you then go on an uncontrolled binge and eat 1,500 calories or 1,500 grams of carbs, mainly from sugar sources, and then spend the next 2 days with your fingers down your throat, yes, that is an eating disorder. I don't care how you want to bother that, that's an eating disorder. But the amount of bodybuilders that prep for competition that go through this sort of guilt process because they've had a cheat meal, or they can't even have a cheat meal because of the guilt process that's attached to that, yes, that is an eating disorder. But because we're bodybuilders, or because we're training for a strength competition or strongman or wherever it is, no, it's not, that's prep. No, it's a fucking eating disorder. Don't colour it anyway, it's not. And a lot of things that happen in our community are covered up because, well, it's what we do. Well, it doesn't mean it's normal. You get this with, this is how distorted mental thinking is. You see, you speak to a user and say, well, effectively your own testosterone production is no longer going to work, so you're going to run TRT, and they're like, oh, that's fine. You speak to a medical professional about someone artificially damaging their own endocrine system to the point where they can't produce hormone anymore, and that would be classed as a serious health problem. But we marginalise a lot of things that we do and how we operate. Now, so this is where it gets quite complex, because it's like how much is environmental and how much is chemical. Now, it's well known that one of the side effects from low testosterone is depression in a male. What's maybe not so well known is he just bought 4 black coffees.
No, he bought 2 white coffees and 2 black coffees. Apparently I was late.
You did say a selection.
But that's a selection, he's done good.
He didn't buy a frappuccino or a skinny latte mocha or anything.
No, do you want sweetener?
No?
No, there you
I
go.
wanted a white chocolate, hot chocolate.
You got that.
Oh well, come on. So, this is where it gets very confusing because we've got an environmental situation and then we've got a chemical situation. Now, as I was saying, it's well known that low testosterone in the male causes depression, lethargy, low mood, all sorts of things. What isn't so well known is low testosterone in the female has a very similar effect. And actually about 55% to 65% of all females there are suffer from low testosterone. But it's not a hormone that's regulated, particularly within the national health. But women suffer quite to a large extent from androgen deficiency. Now, a basic treatment for that would be DHEA, supplementation for 2 milligrams a day, job done. But it's an area that we don't look at. So women suffer from hormone-related depression as well. We know that hormones severely affect the female mood around that time of month. Well, every male in the room does anyway. Every female in the room says, oh, no. No, you're not. We know post-pregnancy, postnatal depression, very well documented. So obviously hormones have an effect on our mood and our mental state. Now, like a lot of things in this world, just because a small amount is good, it does not mean a lot is fucking better. In fact, in a lot of instances, it means a lot is actually a lot worse. Alcohol, a small amount of alcohol is actually a stimulant. Coup d'etat, the French, the reason why they have those very false third pint beers is because they drink one, the farmers actually drink alcohol in the morning because it gives them a bit of a wake up. Too much alcohol or an increased amount of alcohol is depression. It's a depressive action. And we see similar sort of things with steroids. A small or a moderate increase in testosterone quite often will boost someone's mood and their libido and their general well-being. But then what we find is as we start to increase that dose, it starts to go the opposite way. And lethargy sets in and all sorts of other problems occur. And this is one of the reasons for this is because the ratio of hormones is going too far astray. Another reason for this is the toxicity build-up within the body. And that causes us to get lethargic and feel low mood and just generally like crap. Now, where it gets really, really complex is within the brain we have a huge number of neurosteroid receptors. So basically these are receiving points for steroids, neurological steroids, and they trigger an action. It's a bit like a lock and a key. So you have a receptor and this signal comes along, sits in there, and discards or communicates a series of signals that cause something to happen. We produce steroids in our brain. They're not only produced by our sexual organs, we actually produce testosterone, estrogen within our brains and progesterone. Now we have a high number of progesterone receptors in our brain, and to be honest, science isn't quite sure why they're there. Now very small changes in hormonal chemistry in the brain can react in very large changes in personality. At the moment, what we do know is that low-level testosterone dosages has a neuroprotective quality, so it does help support brain function. And what we do know is that nandrolones, the NOR19 family, so decadurabolin, NPP, nandrolone phenylpropionate, and the trends, have a disruptive nature within the brain. Now, a lot of this is very much sort of on the edge of where we are with understanding. We know nandrolones have an impact within the hippocampus, part of the brain. Now, within the hippocampus, we produce a chemical known as NPY, neuropeptide Y. And this is very important in the formulation of new memory. And we know that nandrolones decrease this. Anecdotally, if you know anyone that's based a lot of DECA in their cycles over the year, their memory will be shot to shit. Can't remember fuck all. I will struggle to tell you what I did yesterday. Long term's fine, short term's crap. Absolutely garbage. And it's because the amount of DECA I've used over the years has depleted my neuropeptide Y within my hippocampus, so my short term memory is a bag of crap. The other thing that nandrolones do, well DECA in particular, so we'll start with DECA. One of the other problems that DECA has is it affects the transportation of serotonin, our mood chemical. Now we're all very familiar with EASE, Exocet, And the way XT work is, you have within a synapsal gap, where you have two neurons, and the serotonin jumps from one to the other. What happens is it's sent across and then it returns to be reused. With ecstasy, it blocks the return, which means it's sent across and it's stuck into the reception, it stays there, flooding us with happiness. The problem is then, when that's gone, we've depleted our serotonin levels. And you can naturally have serotonin low levels, so you're naturally going to be gay. And you can naturally have high serotonin levels, so you're naturally an annoying fucking bunny rabbit that needs shooting. Yeah, one about that. So, you know, we have natural variations within it. So, what happens with DECA is it affects the transportation of serotonin between the synapses. And this results in actually an increase in mood while you're using DECA. Well, that's not a bad thing, is it? Well, unfortunately, the problem is then we have a decrease in mood when we remove DECA. So depressive like factors can start post-cycle. Coupled with this, that generally post-cycle we have a disruption in testosterone production, and generally it's going to be a little bit low. You can see how someone coming off cycle can suffer quite strongly with depression. This has obviously several triggers, because they then perceive their own physique, bearing in mind that most users already have a skewed perception of how they look anyway. I won't use the term body dysmorphia because that is a serious psychological ailment. It's more body image. But people do have a skewed perception of how they look when they use anyway. So you're now depressed because you've got low testosterone. You're now depressed because you removed the nandrolone that was affecting your serotonin production or transport. And we've now got someone who's in a very fragile situation in about how they approach what they do with their body, which often spurs them to just go straight back on. And that's addiction. When you have to use a chemical to maintain an equilibrium in how you exist, that's addiction. Now, for years we've said steroids aren't addictive. They are. And I am seeing more and more and more people that have dependency-like habits when it comes to steroid use. They cannot come off. And even when you get them to lower the drugs in one form, they'll look for an alternative. Now, I'm not going to name names, but there is one gentleman who had a very abusive relationship with steroids, and his cruises were 1 gram to 1.5 grams. He'd not been off in 10 years. Now, his steroid doses are a lot more sensible. Still 1.5 grams to 2 grams, but that's actually his cycle now. But now his insulin use is through the fucking roof. And you'll find that when someone starts getting dependent on the drug, they will switch. If they can't use one, they'll look to use another. And it is very, very difficult. And if you're honest with yourself and you're sat in this room and you're a user, if you can honestly stand there and tell me that you can come off cycle with no second thought to it, then I'll take my hat off to you. Because as yet, I've never met a user that can come off cycle and not worry, or be concerned, or have urges to go back on, in one way or another. To use a bridging drug, to go on to growth hormone instead, or peptides instead. And they use that as an excuse because it's not steroids. No, but you're still dependent on a chemical. You've still got to a situation in your relationship with chemicals where you need one. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing in essence. I mean, it's not ideal, but some chemicals have very low impact on our health. Peptides and such like generally are relatively safe. But you've still got to address the fact and be aware of the fact that you now have an unhealthy relationship with chemicals. You are now chemically dependent, one way or another. And the first start of actually dealing with anything like this is just recognising it. I know when I stopped cycling 2.5 years ago, it wasn't easy. That loss of size and that loss of power and just that general shit. I've not got these drugs in my system, I'm not going to be as strong, I'm not going to be big. It's hard to get your head around, particularly if you're known for being big. I've not been under 20 stone since I was 18. Apart from when I competed when I was 19. But, you know, to be faced, we become very, very reliant on these chemicals, and some of that is psychologically based, and some of that is the chemical impact on the brain. Now, Moving forward in the non-drug world, we come to trend. Now, for those that don't know, Tramadol is a veterinary drug. It was briefly released by a French company as a medication called Parabolan. It was withdrawn from the market with no explanation whatsoever. We don't know why, they've never said why. Information on trend's effect on the human body are very, very sparse. But most information we've got either comes from rat studies or comes from anecdotal evidence, especially comes from people users reporting it. Now, trend is known to ruin relationships. That's how much of a strong effect it can have on someone's mental approach. We know trend damages brain cells. Now, trend has the highest binding affinity of any drug in a user's arsenal. Now, binding affinity of a chemical is how strong it attaches to a receptor. Drugs with high binding affinities tend to attach to several receptors. Now, nandrolone has a high binding affinity as well, DECA. And DECA acts like progesterone. And as I said earlier, we have a large number of progesterone receptors in the brain and we don't know what they do. So we know DECA is binding to these receptors, we just don't know what effect it's having. Now, when DECA binds to a receptor, it binds to it with a quarter of the effectiveness of progesterone itself. So it's not that much of that strong influence. Tren, on the other hand, also binds to progesterone receptors, had an increase of 1 to 1.2 of what progesterone will do. And there we do see an impact. Now, most trenders will report insomnia, night sweats, very vivid and disturbing dreams. Now, you've got to think, if I'm taking a chemical and I'm dreaming about killing and raping the next door neighbour, what's that chemical doing to my brain? We also know that trend increases anxiety. Now, when you get chemically induced anxiety, it doesn't go away when you stop the chemical, it stays. And you can have anxiety issues for a very, very long time. Now, people are very reluctant to be public about this. They're very reluctant to go, you know what, I voluntarily took a chemical in an aim to be big, and I fucked myself up, and now I'm paranoid as fucking down the street. But, has anyone noticed how popular CBD oil suddenly become? Why? Oh, because it helps me deal with my anxiety. Oh, the anxiety that you never said you had because you were fine on trend. Everybody's going to do CBD oil. Well, they ain't using CBD oil because they want, because, oh, I might as well, it's just there, because it's fucking 200 quid a bottle for the good stuff. They're using it because they need it. They need it because they're paranoid and anxious as fuck, because of the gear they take it. The most popular drug sold by every UGO in the country today is Crem. It's the biggest selling steroid there is. So, the reason we've got such high sales of CBD oil spiking in the bodybuilding community at the moment, the user community at the moment, is predominantly down to trend use. It is massive in its use. Now, we don't know this for fact. We know trend causes anxiety. Now, one of the triggers for anxiety is the CB1 and CB2 receptors in the amygdala, never say it, dangly bit in the brain. And that's why CBD helps. But also, the CB2 receptor, if that's stimulated in a positive manner, then that attracts us to be with company. It helps us desire other people around us, companionship. Not from a sexual point of view, just, you know, that want of a feeling of being longing. Now, trend users report that they disassociate with people around them. They don't want to be associated with people. And they particularly come cold towards loved ones. And they disassociate themselves from emotion. So there's a strong chance, and this is just theory, that because trend has such a massive affinity in binding to other receptors, that it's actually attaching to the CB2 receptor in the brain. And this is why we feel distant. And this is why we feel removed from people around us and less emotional. Because it literally switches it off. Now that's going to have a long-term impact in lots of different ways. Because you're not going to understand your emotions and feelings. You're not going to understand why you feel like that. Quite often you don't even care why you feel like that. Now I work with an individual who was on a very high dose of Tren, it got that bad in them, they were eventually committed for 6 weeks. But what triggered the committal was that they were laid on their bed in their room with an insulin pen and a load of insulin cartridges, and they were loading them up, winding it up, firing it in, taking it out, sticking it on, loading it up, wiring it up, firing it in. They woke up 2 days later in hospital in the psychiatric care unit. They didn't want to kill themselves, but they didn't care. They were completely removed from any emotional feeling and attachment to what they were doing. And then you wonder why Tren ruins relationships. You're starting to feel like that ain't warm and fuzzy for your partner, is it? And the other thing with Tren is it changes our sexual appetite. Now, it's jokes about males being increasingly ravenous when it comes to when they're on Tren for sex. And there's loads of memes and stupid posters about it, and that's when she set up the Tren and all this sort of stuff. I mean, it does, and yeah, fair enough, it's a bit fun. But when relationships get to the point where partners are scared because the sex is so aggressive and the male doesn't care, then you start having a problem, because how far are we away from rape then? If the Tren's driving people in relation, well, effectively they are raping the partner, because quite often it's not that consensual. And I do see it, and I see it more often than people may realise. Guys that are running high levels of Tren, they want it, and when they want it then. It's as simple as that. Now, you could look at that and say, well, that is relationship rape. Depends on how you want to perceive it. But there's definitely situations where the other partner would rather have not bothered that day. But they can't say no, because they're so demanding. Couple that with emotional detachment, not caring about what your partner thinks, heightened aggression, you can see where all this is going. And there are numerous cases I've dealt with where it's been very, very borderline for there to be a charge there. I've not seen it cross over into non-consensual sex with an unknown partner, but I have seen it happen in relationships. That's how much that stuff changes the way your brain works. Like I said, anxiety, I know of several people that, that's it, they're done. Their anxiety problems are that difficult for them to manage now, they're struggling to function in normal life. Now granted, they had a susceptibility to this in the first place, but this is how much of the chemicals can have an impact within your brain. And the problem is with a lot of this stuff, there are no studies, or studies are very, very minimal. So we don't really know. So a lot of the information that comes from users and problems they're experiencing. Another thing that we're seeing crop up as well is inflammation of cranial cavity fluid through steroid use. So basically the fluid around your brain gets inflamed. And generally it will start with ocular problems, so it will start with your vision brain, but basically your brain's slow. PEGF2A, quite a rare compound, not very often found, used as a site growth agent or a fat burner. PEGF2A is a proglastin, it's a growth factor, it's produced naturally within the body. It's also used in veterinary practice for abortions. It's very easy to get hold of, it's not particularly expensive. That causes your whole brain to swell. That's going to do damage, whichever way you look at it. You generally find that long-term users start to have cognitive issues. They're just not as they used to be. And I know I have that problem. I say I haven't used it for 2.5 years, but I know my cognitive function is nowhere near as good as it used to be. I struggle to concentrate. Again, like I said, not only is a short-term memory impact, but it does damage the brain function in another way. And it's not that the drugs themselves, well, apart from Tren, I don't think anyone could ever argue that Tren was safe in any way, form or another. It's just a case of managing it. But it's definitely not safe. I'm not plugging that shit. And what is in this that's neuroprotective? And that is one of the problems, from a neuroprotective point of view, there's not a lot we can do. The one thing I would say is, have someone in your camp who you trust, who knows what you're doing, and who you trust to listen to them when they turn around and say, you're acting a fucking dick, wind your neck in. Because you won't see it yourself. It completely changes the perception of how we operate. You will be well and completely justified in what you're doing. Now, it's completely different to when you're on prep, because when you're on prep, you've done a grumpy twat, and you know you're a grumpy twat. And you feel guilty about it, because you know your family's suffering because you're a grumpy twat, because you're starving and you're hungry and you're pissed off and you're cold and your butt hurts, your feet hurt and everything else that's going on. That's different to the same effects that are induced by the chemicals. You don't care. You don't actually even see it as a problem in a lot of instances. You see it as you're acting normally and everybody else has a fucking problem with you. A prime example, alright? Only yesterday, online, kids taking 1,000 milligrams of DNP a day. Yeah, that's sort of I'm going to be dead very shortly sort of territory. And that morning he started vomiting black stuff and coughing up blood and generally being very ill. What was causing it was his question. And would him being sick have affected the amount of DNP he got in his system, and should he take more? It is insane the way people's thought processes change when we introduce these sort of drugs. Because these drugs work, and it's very much linked into, our own personal psyche and our own personal perceptions, which is very much driven by social influences, media and stuff like that, that we end up getting into a situation where we become very dependent on something because we just lose all faith in our own abilities. And then you have the drugs in the background that manifest and create greater problems, and you can see where this is going. Now, the start of this, I've been harping on like a boring old fart for a very long time that we are yet to see the tip of the iceberg of the problems. And this year seems to have been the changing point where I'm starting to see more and more serious health issues. I know of 8 music-related deaths since the beginning of the year, another 4 heart attacks. And when it comes to mental health, Jesus Christ, the list is endless. And like I said, we don't recognise the effect of the chemicals, 1, because we're using them, and 2, because it's so accepted within our community to be this way or that way. It's so accepted to count out how many asparagus tips you have in one meal because it's like a button. That's not normal function. I must count exactly how many steps and how many acros I have to the button. No, that isn't normal function either, because your calorie expenditure will increase if you have a big shit that day. But we get so obsessive, so tunnel vision, that we lose track of where we are. Paul George, pro bodybuilder, now powerlifter, he got to the point where he could only eat 6 foods. That's all he would eat. He was so focused and so obsessive. And the thing is, we as a community reward this as being, look at that guy, disciplined, determined, incredible. John Peters, great guy, incredibly knowledgeable guy, good mate of mine, got a lot of time for the kid. But he's fucked in the head. There's no way about it. His treat is to go to the cinema once a week. That is not a balanced lifestyle. That is not healthy, mental health-wise. He's currently running 7 milligram of Strom.
He's on low dose.
That's low dose, yeah. Yeah, plus 700 milligrams of Strom, plus 350 milligrams of test, plus growth, plus insulin, plus Increlix, and considering he's only putting 350 milligrams of test in a week, he's running 2.5 milligrams of Letro. Strongest anti-aromatization there is. So basically he's got no estrogen going on at all. Estrogen is a very protective hormone in a male, both for internal organs and for brain function. And like I say, because we're at it, but we just don't see it. We can't recognise it. But if you can't, if you pose this question to yourself, can I stop now? And if when you answer that question, you go, well, yeah, but, then you need to start thinking about your usage relationship. And it's hard. I've been there, I've been through it. I mean, I had no choice to come off. But it wasn't the easiest decision to make because I identified personally with being 360, 380 pound, walking around with 26.5 inch arm and benching 5 plates like there was no tomorrow. So when suddenly the mechanism that helped me get there was taken away, shit, who am I? What am I? Where am I? And a lot of the problems about this are that we're not comfortable with ourselves. That doesn't mean you have to love yourself, but it just means you have to accept you where you are and who you are. I'm fat. I know I'm fat. You know what? Fuck it. I like McDonald's and donuts too much. I ain't changing it. My desire to change it isn't enough. But I accept where I am. But that isn't blindness. I also recognise where I am as well. Now you need to be able to look at yourself honestly and say, right, this is who I am, this is where I am. Then if you have a desire to change, fine, change. But you could be very, very careful about how you do that chemically. And if you find that that change involves a dependency on a chemical, then that's going to skew how you look at yourself and how you look at your usage. The biggest thing they say in addiction treatment is that before we can treat an addict, they have to recognise they are. And we have a community of probably 2 million users in the UK that I reckon 98% do not recognise that their relationship with their chemical intake isn't the best it could be. Does that mean that you should be able to easily just go no and walk away? No, of course it doesn't. It's perfectly normal to have some difficulty in removing the drugs from your life. And I'm not saying you shouldn't use, I'm just saying if you can't walk away at any point, then you really got to look at yourself what's going on. But it doesn't mean it's supposed to be easy. But it does mean you should be able to do it. And if you feel you can't do it, then you've got to start asking why. What's going on in my life? Why do I need to inject a chemical that was never designed for human consumption to exist? See, a lot of us move into this world because we're insecure about the way we look, self-confidence, body image and such like. And yeah, I've seen steroids be very productive in increasing people's confidence and self-image, particularly if they have a low hormone issue initially and it wasn't recognised. But I've also seen people get to the point where the drug is their confidence. So remove the drug, you remove the confidence. You've got to believe in yourself. You've got to learn to love yourself. So I know it sounds really corny in 1970s, all standing in the corner and hug each other shit, but you do. You have to learn to like you. And then everything else is just an extra. It's not a requirement. I can never sit here and say don't use steroids. Jesus Christ, I've been the biggest hypocrite on the planet. Fuck me, actually I've done enough to kill an elephant. But you need to be in control. And that's where it starts becoming a big problem, is when you're not. When you have to have. If you start getting irritated because you miss an injection or something like that, or you start getting irritated because you missed a meal, then maybe your relationship's not the healthiest it should be. And maybe you need to start rationalising where you are, what you're doing, where you're going. I mean, I've been almost probably quite fortunate because, all right, yeah, I fucked my health, but also what I've done is created my career. So I earn my living out of what I do. But how many people in the room, besides coaching, learn their living from their physiques? And then put that into context with where you are within your relationship with your drug usage and within your relationship with your partner, significant other, whatever it may be, hedgehog, next door neighbour's cat, dog, I don't care. And you've got to see if there's balance there. You know? I mean, they say that steroid users don't go into crime to feed their habit. Well, hang on a minute, it's actually illegal to sell steroids. And a lot of steroid users turn to selling steroids to fund their usage of their own steroids. So technically, yes, they do take the crime. All right, you're not going out mugging old grannies. But you see, in our eyes, because we're users, well, that's not criminal, there's nothing wrong with that. We rationalise it. Because we're users. The same we rationalise having a cheat day and consuming 93 million Mars bars. How many of you seen on Facebook posted epic cheat day and there's enough there to feed a small African family? Did you really need all that? No. Did you feel good for it at the end of the day? Did you fuck? You felt like your stomach was going to burst and the next day you're going to rip your arsehole in half. It's vile, you feel like that, you feel horrible. So why do you do it? Because we have an unhealthy relationship, because we have issues perceiving where we are. I say the chemical stuff, I mean, I know Richard wants me to predominantly talk about the chemical stuff, but the problem is with it is there's so little known. We know it has an effect. We know it does damage. We know it changes. We, for years, myself, even with harm reduction, for years, there's no such thing as roid race, there's no such thing as roid race. Actually, there is. A lot of it. And particularly around that one compound, Trent. Or Halo. Or Checkrox, Milburon. Milburon is a veterinary drug. It has pretty much been discontinued because it turned animals so aggressive they were uncontrollable. And we take it before we go on the platform to lift weights. For one reason and one reason only. Because it makes us aggressive. But we never stop to think of the chemical process behind that. That's severely altering the way our brain chemistry works in order to create that effect. I am seeing people very mentally challenged because of the usage. And the problem as well within our community is we're all a bunch of liars. All of us. Yeah, we got 5 reps, no, we got 4.5. Yeah, it was to death, no it wasn't, it was an inch high. Yeah, I didn't have any problems with this prep at all, it was great, I feel great. No, you were crying in the corner 2 days ago asking for your fucking mum. But we lie. Because we don't like to show weakness, and we're in a community where weakness is very much judged and frowned on. You know, if you admit that you lost the plot in a prep and you went off the rails, Jesus Christ, you're slated forever. Well, maybe this isn't for you. Prep's hard, man the fuck up, get on with it. So no one says it. But just the way people react to changes, i.e. CBD coming in, it's obvious that a large number of the user community have depression and anxiety issues when it comes to the usage. That's why CBD is so popular. So it's difficult to be honest, and it's difficult to be honest in the environment in which we operate, because nobody is. And trust me, if you think you're the only one that's got the problem you've currently got, you're not. There's plenty else out. Another example, yesterday. 0, and I mean actually 0 sperm production. Alright? What's happened? Oh, it's no, well I can't come off, why? Because I can't use Novodex. Why can't I use Novodex? Because I had a blood clot and it went into my lung and I had some serious problems. Alright. Were you on cycle at the time? Yeah. Right. Don't you think the steroids could have an impact? No, doctors told me it was Novodex. Well actually, the only reported cases of blood clots in Novodex are in cancer patients. But there's a lot more evidence to support that gear causes blood clots. So, don't you think it might be the gear? No, it can't be the gear, I've been on 2 years. Complete, trying to justify the usage. How many people have seen online go, alright, I'm on the train, missus has fallen out of me, dog's hiding in the cupboard because I tried raping it. I feel like absolute shit, I've scared my kids, what do? Come off the train. Well no, there's got to be something else I can do. You see it all the time. And it's like, look, get a grip. It's not the be-all and fucking end-all, isn't trend. There are other drugs you can use. But it means working a little bit harder potentially. And that's what people are scared of. People go on about the guys from yesteryear and they didn't use that. Now there were exceptions. Sean Dyneford Davis, he used enough to kill rhinos and populate a small village. But a vast majority of them were very low users. They just trained very, very hard. And they weren't obsessive about their food. They made sure they got the protein in they needed and the rest just came from wherever. And I say, the whole thing just, some of the cycles I see, and it's like, right, well, I need to take this at this time, 15 minutes past the hour, but 3 minutes before that hour, on a moon out, on a day which ends in a, that begins with a T, when the dogs howl 3 times. Just shove it in. yes, certain drugs need some time, but generally speaking, it isn't that complex. Oh, but I need to take this, I need to take that. No, don't. But we like, the more complex it is in our brains, we think the better it is. And the problem is, the more complex it gets, the harder it is to track what's causing the problem. So when something does go wrong, well, it could be that, or it could be that, or it could be this, or it could be that, we don't know. And I guarantee I haven't spoken to, now bear in mind I probably speak to 100 to 150 people a day with problems. Some are ongoing, so that I might speak to them, several times in a day. That's roughly my inbox. That's my wife. I'm never off the fucking phone. Ever. And it's mind-boggling the problems people are having, but none of them want to come up. None of them want to do that. All of them just, no, there must be something else I can do. There must be something else I can do. I've even seen guys online, yes, cycle's going great, putting weight and feel great, and within 10 minutes I've got a message. I feel like shit. So why are you online promoting? Alright, just don't say anything then. If you don't want to be honest and open about your fucking things up, just don't say anything. But why the hell are you online saying you feel great, and this is your cycle, when there's, the page you're on's got 25,000 followers. A large number of them are young kids, and they're just going to go, he's got a good physique, that's what I need to do. We've got a social responsibility for those around us. If we don't, as a unity, as a group, start collectively looking after each other, we're going to see big issue. Now, everyone that uses is paranoid about the old bill changing the law. The old bill don't want to change the law. It's more hassle than it's worth. But if we don't protect ourselves and protect our community and be more open with each other and more understanding with each other about problems, including mental health, then they will. Because there'll be too much pressure from lobby, they'll have no choice. When they'll start taking notice is when we start costing the NHS a lot of money. And it's started. It is now more and more recognised by the NHS that there are problems with steroid use both mentally and physically. The physical stuff's getting quite well established, the mental health stuff's new. But it will rank very, very quickly. As a nation, our mental health is shit. And as a community, and bodybuilding and fitness and strongman, our mental health is even fucking worse. Out of all the communities, for one that's supposed to be focused around physical fitness and well-being, we're shit. We really are. Because our mental health is garbage. I think there'll be very few people in this room, if they were completely and openly honest to an independent person, the person wouldn't turn around and say, you know what, you've got fucking issues. There's something not quite right about you. Because of what we do to ourselves in our pursuit for what we try and gain. Now, if you're competitive, I understand the motivation. If you earn a living out of it, I understand the motivation. If you're doing it for a hobby, and because you're supposed to make you happy, is it? Because how many people go, God, I'm sick of dieting, but I'm going to smash it when I go on stage. Oh, it was all politics. That's why I placed 7 out of 6. I'll do better next time. Can't wait to get off season, start eating again. Massive growth. Oh, I'm sick of eating. I'm bloated. I feel like shit. I can't wait to diet. Hang on a minute, mate. You haven't said you're happy at any one point in all of this shit. Why the fuck are you doing this? But that's how twisted we get. Add chemicals to that, and our own perceptions go out the window. Anyway, I've obviously yappled on enough because I'm getting a signal from... Oh, by the way, please buy Support Max. Excellent product. Really, really good.